Games of any kind of genre will always require a certain amount of strategy. While it is this very strategy and complexity that draws us towards Dota 2 like a moth to a flame, it is also the very same thing that makes the very game so very grueling for newcomers and veterans alike. This video is aimed at understanding the concept of what a so-called power spike or timing is in relation to Dota 2, of course. With that in mind, let's get things started. Some might be able to infer it from the name alone. A power spike is a sudden surge in power from a player perspective that lets them carry out certain feats. Often also known as timings, this phenomenon comes in many forms. As an individual player, it can come as soon as the first few levels of the game. For an example, a lot of support heroes such as Lion, Skywrath and Hoodwink, just to name a few, get a sudden power spike as soon as they reach level 6. They're suddenly able to use a spell that has a massive amount of damage attached to it, more often than not being able to kill off a core hero on their own when done right. Or, at the very least, once helped by another player. On the other end of the spectrum, we have cores who tend to ramp up slower, but greater than the support heroes do. Because their ultimates and powers tend to escalate with items and levels, they'll end up being that much more terrifying as the game goes on for longer. And of course, power spikes as a team. If your team doesn't really have any good late game core heroes, but really good early game power and pushing ability, that's exactly where your power spike is at. Indeed, it's almost by this very notion that the original 1 through 5 position chart is made in regard to power spiking. 1 tend to be the slowest but hardest spiker given time, whereas 5 will be initially fast but weaker when compared later. One of the things plenty of players get wrong about Dota 2 and the way they play is their spikes and timings in general. This usually stems not so much from being mechanically poor at the game, but more often either a lack of experience or a certain unwillingness to push the advantage that their power spike gives them. How often haven't you played a game where it felt like you and your entire team were ahead, you had Aegis on your position 1, you had all their outer towers, and yet still the majority of your team decided that farming creeps were the better option? Don't tell me, even if you're down 1 or 2, you don't have that many fingers. It's very, very important we utilize timings like these when we have them. They are essentially what allows us to either win the game or at the very least get massively ahead when the opportunity presents itself. People like to fall back into comfort though, and I think this is something that's almost fundamentally built into all of us as human beings. We've had a nice meal, we're now content, now would be a good time to lay on the couch and catch some Z's. While Dota 2 most definitely is a feast, it's also very much a war game. And it's one where your every decision, or in this case indecision, matters greatly, which makes it all the more important that the spikes and timings you acquire throughout the game are utilized to their fullest extent. While experience gained throughout the match already dictates largely what kind of power spike your hero in question will have, so too does gold, since it directly translates to how quickly items can be picked up in the first place. As an example, Phantom Lancer. Phantom Lancer has some rather interesting power spikes in his gameplay. As a position 1, it's easy to think that he's just supposed to get 6 slotted and win, but it ain't exactly that easy. His very first big power spike comes in the form of the Fusel Blade. As soon as he acquires this item, he can go absolutely ballistic when it comes to damage, and the hero that was, while decent before, suddenly becomes an absolute monster. Then, not too long after, it's as if he loses a bit of steam. And that's because he does. Other heroes start to reach their timings, they acquire BKBs so the Fusel won't work anymore, and support starts acquiring Glimmer Capes and so on. But then it happens. Phantom Lancer suddenly has a harder Tarrasque in his inventory. And all of a sudden he seems downright unkillable as he's back to killing people again. This is exactly what a power spike is. In Phantom Lancer's case, he gets one fairly early and then one much later in the game. Play into the timings of the hero however, and you'll be pleasantly surprised by how much pain you can inflict on your enemy. When certain parameters of items are met, when you acquire an Aegis from Roshan, if your Earthshaker or Magnets just got a Blink Dagger, these are the spikes you're looking to utilize. The last important point I want to address in the case of timings and spikes is none other than that of your own team. One of the most common complaints I see people post about in general is that their team doesn't want to play. Now, this is objectively true. I know it is, you know it is, so how do we go about changing that? The reality is, sometimes we can't. The reality is also that there's often times that we can. You know how when you watch someone play sports ball and the crowd chants especially loud or plays that amazing sounding vuvuzela just right and all of a sudden the team in question gets a goal? Yeah, that isn't something you need to just sports ball, it's present in almost any given game or challenge. We humans get motivated and excited by being encouraged and spurred on in just about any way possible. I mention this because you, as a player, have 2 powerful tools at your disposal to make people fulfill their timings and spikes. 1, your voice, or 2, your actions. In one's case, your voice in particular can be an overwhelmingly powerful tool. You don't even have to talk much for it to work either. A simple "let's go gank now and then Roche" is miles better than just being silent. Likewise, encouraging your team for doing well and playing actively, funnily enough, causes them to pursue that very notion because they were validated for doing so. If you tell an invoker that his Sunstrikes are just so very amazing, you better believe he's going to give you the front row seat to the Invoker Sunstrike-a-thon orchestra because Mr. Carl certainly has something to prove. In the case of 2, this is done by doing just about anything active around on the map. By playing aggressively and active, you on average promote this kind of mindset and playstyle onto others. If you're a Lion running around and getting finger kills every time your ultimate is off cooldown, you're proving to your team that you are an active player willing to use your ult to get kills. Or, from the example of a core, a faceless Void can sit in AFK farm with his Mask of Madness in jungle. He can also decide to use that amazing ultimate of his every time it's off cooldown and the opportunity presents itself to help his team in certain engagements. The mere process to show that you're willing to chip in where you're able promotes team play and timings, because people will feel there's a sense of teamwork and camaraderie. This isn't just a free-for-all anymore, it's a team effort. Would you rather have a mid-sniper going 1-3 sitting in jungle with a Midas trying to acquire position 1 farm? Or would you rather have a Powerspike and Queen of Pain floating around everywhere with over 10 kills at 15 minutes? One of these two playstyles will promote a happier team that is more likely to play into timings. As the old saying goes, teamwork makes the dream work. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this week's video. As always, you're able to catch me streaming live from Monday to Friday at twitch.tv/fabkubashi. Like my content? A thumbs up or a subscribe means the world to me. Any thoughts on the concept of timings and power spikes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Go out there and be the best you can be. Until next time.